All right. We are live. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm your host, Robert Michaels. Glad that you're here. Want to just share something with you guys before we get fired off here. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, paraglidingtalk.com. So glad you're here tonight. Pretty excited about tonight's show. It is a special episode, as a matter of fact. So you're a part of something special tonight. So welcome. Do hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that. Make sure you follow the show on paraglidingtalk.com. That's the website. So each week you can go on Thursday nights and find out who's going to be on the show. Sometimes I put it ahead of time and a couple days or so ahead. But tonight's show is very special. We have Yankee Paramotors with us tonight, and he's going to be helping us to better understand airspace. We're going to take a look at the Sky Vector website on sectionals, air charts, aeronautical charts. We're going to discuss some of the important facets of flying and respecting airspace rules and laws. And he's got just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to airspace, and has been a fixed wing pilot for many years. He's just got a really deep understanding, a thorough understanding of both flying fixed wing and also paramotoring now. And so we have a really great show lined up. Also, Ripman is going to be with us. He's lurking around somewhere. Sean Nafsker's with us in moderation. He's going to spin the wheel of winning things. We also have Anthony Peregringo. He's going to be taking care of batting questions. KCR80, KC80RW, Nick is with us. Also, Craig Taylor is with us tonight. And we're going to have a excellent show. You have found the best show on the interwebs on Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, paraglidingtalk.com. This show is brought to you by PPG Smoke. If you haven't gone and checked out their website yet, you should. Paragliding, all kinds of paragliding stuff on there. PPG Smoke has the smoke machines. Ryan Roberts has a electric paramotor coming out of the works soon. He's got all kinds of cool headphones, smoke machines, lamels, strobe systems. Anyways, go check out their website. It's ppgsmoke.com. Also, the show is brought to you by paramotorprops.com. If you are looking to get a good deal on props, go to paramotorprops.com. Best deals on the interwebs for props. Also, this show is brought to you by paraorangeproducts.com. I want to say thanks to the Chris and Larry for sending me out this little gift bag full of, or it's a mug, Para Orange mug, but it's also got a bunch of candy in there.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. Look at this. Look.
Yeah.
Woo, look at all that beautifulness right there. Yeah.
So really appreciate them. So go check out their website and support the sponsors. If you want to be a sponsor of the show, reach out to me through the website. It's not very expensive, and it supports a really good cause, learning how to be better pilots. So welcome. Thank you, Yankee, for taking the time to come on the show. Really appreciate it. And
well, Robert, thanks for having me back after my first visit here. What has it been now? Almost well over 2 years since you had me on the very first time. And man, how much I've learned, and my paramotoring has really progressed. My paragliding's gotten a little more experience, not as much as you have because I don't live in those areas, but thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got to come, man. You got to come to San Diego and just bring the RV. You can park it right out front, and then you can go to Blossom every day while I go to work.
I know you say that, and it's on the agenda.
That's right. So I want to start off tonight by saying, first of all, thank you all for coming on and being a part of the show. I want to talk about the importance of airspace rules and something, and let me set the stage here. Something that I've noticed over the years is there is a certain animosity from free flight pilots towards airspace rules, and I'll tell you why. A lot of times guys are fighting tooth and nail just to get enough altitude to get to the next place. So in their, and I'm going to throw myself in there, in our desire to get from point A to point B, which is usually some long cross country flight, we justify a violation of airspace because we said, well, we earned it because we know how to thermal. Okay. Now I'm shooting straight tonight. I'm not pulling any punches. We, as a group, need to do much better when it comes to airspace. Now, I'm not trying to dog anybody. I'm not trying to oust anybody, and I'm not going to say any names. I'm not going to bring up any certain circumstances that would incriminate anyone. I'm not going to try to play that game. But tonight, what I would love to do is bring out an understanding. And something I mentioned to Yankee before the show started is I said that in the very beginning, we're talking in April, it'll be 4 years ago, I was very intimidated when I opened up the sectional chart. And for the first time, I was looking at this airspace that I wanted to fly in, which is right over my house. And when I first opened the sectional chart, I said, my word, we have so much activity around where I want to fly. Now, if you were to look at this chart from a distance, you would say that, that is, you can't comprehend what's happening here. Like, no one should be flying a paraglider anywhere near San Diego, right? So I was intimidated by that. This is where I fly. If you're just looking at the screen here and trying to understand what's going on. So this area here with the big circle, that's Lindbergh Field. And if you follow these weird shapes, and we're going to talk about this tonight with Yankee, we've got military landing zone, and there's proper terminology. I'm butchering all the proper terminology, but just stay with me. And so there's all these airspace regulations that happen in the area where I want to fly. So having said that, I was always intimidated by that. And I was always embarrassed to have a conversation about airspace because I didn't know it. I didn't understand it. And guys would say, yeah, well, if you're cross country, you can fly in airspace, you're going to be class B airspace right here. We're going to class C airspace, and there's going to be cakes, and there's going to be this and that. And I remember feeling like, I'm just going to follow this guy that knows. And, it goes along with the weather. You're just trusting kind of blindly whoever is going to go flying that day, that the weather's not going to kill you. And so along those lines, I never really developed in the airspace because we just said
discussions on this with other pilots is what's going to build your vocabulary and your understanding of it. And it's going to correct your misinterpretation. So everybody needs to get over that. Well, I'd rather say nothing and look like I know what I'm doing than say the wrong thing and be the guy that gets called out in the group discussion.
So
and that's something we as a group of paramotorists and paragliders need to not make our educational sessions with newer pilots demeaning or embarrassing in any way.
One of the things that we deal with in free flight that doesn't happen in the motoring scene is that you're under a certain amount of time constraints because your thermals are going to die off at a certain time. You're going to end up landing when you run out of air, where as a paramotor, you kind of plan when you're going to fly. You plan where you're going to fly from. You have some, that like a lot of you guys on the East Coast have to coordinate with airports, and you're going to write down, you're going to game plan what you're going to do that day. So a lot of times this stuff, once we hit a certain altitude with free flight, we will literally get on the radio and go, wow, this is banging. Let's go. You guys want to go over the back? And we have this term. We say, you want to go over the back. Whenever that doesn't really mean over the back of anything. It just means let's go somewhere, and we leave that site and go flying. Now we justify in our minds, okay, I don't really know what the airspace is. Once I'm in the air, it's kind of up to your own discretion. I've flown in conditions where I shared thermals with sailplanes. I've had jump planes fly underneath me. I've had airplanes fly right on my heading in different situations. Now we're going to curb the talk about the what are they called? ADSs or
ADSB
ADSBs
is a transmitter that those airplanes carry so that they can see each other, and that yes.
Those are coming soon. We'll have that conversation somewhere down the road. But as of for right now, we don't have those. And so here's what I want to unpack. And I know I just said a lot, but I wanted to set the stage for the conversation because otherwise some people might get turned off and just, Yeah, it's boring. I'm going to turn this off. I'll go watch something else. No, listen, stay here. You got to learn some stuff. This is really good understanding. What I asked Yankee in the beginning was that because his knowledge goes deep, but it's too I think it's too deep for my appreciation. So what I told him is I said, we'll open it up and I'm going to give you the platform, but I want to translate this all over to free flight and paramotoring. And so if you have questions that you want to ask while something triggers, please put them in the chat. There's already a few of them that are popping up, and we're going to actually open the sectional right now. And I want to just give you one scenario, and then I'm going to give you the platform. How's that sound? Here we go. Share this screen. Okay, sharing. Okay, so here's a scenario. As I can't really zoom in too much more on this. I guess I could do something like that. What did you call this little moniker here? This is the hang gliding, or
you'd have to look on the sectional chart in the legend. So one of the key things you can do to understanding these sectional charts is find each and every one of these little icons on here and go to the legend and see what they actually mean. If nothing else, it will help you be able to find how this map or chart correlates to where you're actually at on the ground. But
right,
the black numbers there are probably the tops of antennas, if I'm not mistaken, because the contour lines are the tops of the mountains themselves. So you can see the faint gray line around Blossom there it says 2,500 is a contour line. So everywhere along that contour line is at the same elevation.
And that's the peak, 3,675. That's the highest point of the mountain. That's where, So what I wanted to bring up was that this is our flying spot. So everybody can get a bearing here. This, basically in between this wingtip right here is launch. And if you were to look really close here, that's Amen Ridge. And not that you can really see that, but we make the crossing, we go over here, there's El Capitan. So just to give you a representation. So some guys on a day where the wind direction was north crossed the 8 and were visited. They were playing around these mountains right here.
The 8 is California talk for Interstate 8.
Interstate 8, that's correct.
Right, so.
Yeah, sorry, I should preface that. And the guys were flying around here, and they got a visitation by a sheriff's helicopter who got on the intercom and said, paragliders, you're flying in illegal airspace and you need to immediately land. And they even used the term spiral down and land. And I'm not sure, and again, I'm not trying to out anybody. They weren't violating airspace. This is obviously not in a violation of flying. So after hearing that conversation, I talked with a few different people, and I got this kind of deer in headlights look. And so that's when I thought, you know what, we need to have a little more conversation about airspace. Okay, so I have a few questions, and this is for my own personal knowledge. And I hope that some people can learn about this. Now, we know that the yellow is symbolic of light, that if you're flying at night, the yellow area is kind of a congested area of lights. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a congested residential area or a congested any type of
or that the FAA in an enforcement action would say, well, you were in the yellow area, therefore you were inside a congested area. Although that might be the case, that's not proven to always be the rule, so I've been told.
Got it. Yes. Okay. So I have the same understanding that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a congested area. It just means that this is what you're going to see when you're in the air. And I believe that this stuff will change as the cities grow and all that stuff. But so another question I have, now, we have an understanding these blue lines represent borders. They're very thick. Now, part of the reason is obviously so that when you are looking at a sectional and you're going to fly from Arizona to San Diego, it's very obvious where you're going to land, where you're going to end up in these areas. I should preface, this is from a website called skyvector.com. If one of you guys could put that link in the description or put that link in the chat for everyone. I think it's a good idea to take some time and just go poke around at this in your area. And also, if you guys, any of the moderators wanted to pull this up to look at something in your area. My main concern is that when we get up and we decide we're going to leave to go on a cross-country flight, we're always talking about staying away from Ramona airspace. You guys see my mouse, I assume, faintly or no?
Sure.
So here's the Ramona airspace. And so a lot of times we'll skirt right along this airspace and then we'll make our turn towards Santa Isabella. And if we really crank, we can make it to Palm Springs from here. So there's Warner Springs. Then you make your way up to Palm Springs. Okay. So altitudes, the 6.9 represents, and it's my understanding that this represents 6,900 feet. And once you're in that airspace, above that, you're violating airspace under FAR 103.
No, that is a grid altitude.
Okay.
So the altitudes that you need to be concerned with in this situation are inside of that diamond triangle shape that extends out to accommodate the approaching aircraft getting into Miramar there. So it's the 10,000 feet right over Ramona down to 4,800 feet. So 4,801 feet up to 10,000 feet is the protected airspace. And then when you can fly underneath that at say 4,700 feet, and then the Ramona airspace is actually lower than that. And sometimes, in some cases, it might be concurrent with it, depending on the part of the country you're in. But what the dashes around the Ramona airspace there are indicating Class Delta airspace, which is a completely different class than the Class Bravo airspace that we're talking about here between the 4,800 and the 10,000 foot.
Right.
Now
Now
you can see it steps down as you get further to the west there, as you get into both El Cajon and Miramar.
Right. So when you say Ramona airspace, so we're obviously going to try to stay out of this ring.
The
right?
round ring is Ramona's airspace, yes.
Right. And so when it says 38, you're saying that as long as you're above 3,800 feet, you can cross over. Okay.
Which doesn't give you much room though. So, you got to be below 4,800 on the south side of that.
Right here.
And above 3,800. And I don't see how you would do that without an engine. Maybe you could on a
certain days. Yeah, you might be able to make that happen. But considering these type of decisions based on your landmarks, real time in the air with, maintaining situational awareness and hands-on piloting, or active piloting, I should say, likelihood of a free flight guy going to the books while he's flying, very unlikely. This is something that must be done long before you decide to go over the back. Okay.
Absolutely.
Same thing with paramotoring, right? So now let's reel it back one more time real quick. This 6,900 feet. So we've got a couple.
Can you zoom out? Can you zoom out
Sure.
significantly, and we'll pick up other altitudes like that?
Yeah. Okay.
So if you look over here, there's 6,700 feet to the east, and then you look up towards Palm Springs, there's 7,100 feet. So those are not limitation altitudes.
Okay.
Those indicate, I believe, the highest terrain in that grid. So if you see these grids that are shaped like they look like little bullseyes all over. They run in about 20-mile squares. So that 6,900 up there north of Warner Springs is the highest elevation of any of the terrain bordered by that grid. So those are not airspace.
Okay. Now,
and this is why you got to get into that legend.
Right. Okay. Got it. So you're talking about this grid here, this big
Yes, the one you're outlining with your mouse is the grid that is being
okay, indicated. I see another one. Yeah. Okay, that makes way more sense. I never even really noticed that grid before. Okay, good. See, I'm learning stuff even tonight. Okay, so let's talk about this airspace a little more. So we know that if we zoom in right here, this 3,675 feet is the peak of El Capitan, one of my favorite places to go and fly. Something that we're going to be looking for now, fixed wing aircraft are looking for this to say, you know what, I'm going to stay away from that. I want to keep a certain distance. What is your consensus on altitudes? I know that you will fly along and try to find smooth air, and if that means go as low as you can, what's your limitations?
It's clearly delineated in the FARs for fixed wing pilots. So, and in what's considered mountainous terrain, I believe it's 2,000 feet. A lot of this, like I said earlier in the pre-show, is lost on the more advanced pilots because they just never operate in this kind of an environment. They're always in that highly controlled, highly structured environment. This is something your helicopter guys are going to know. This is your local pilot that might live. He might have a float plane that he takes up to one of those lakes on the weekends, and he knows the airspace and he knows the legal requirements a lot better than, say, airliner guy is going to know, because he needs to know all of those minor nuances to be able to do what he wants to do.
Right.
So I believe I can look it up real quick. I believe it's either 2,000 feet or 1,500 feet in mountainous terrains above the highest terrain.
So one of the things that was intimidating for me right out of the gate was military. And so we have this magenta thick line that kind of surrounds a good portion of San Diego. Now, I remember reading on this, and it was a test question for your P3, and getting into military airspace was always really like a kind of scary, because you imagine, you're going to get a visit from a fighter plane. Hey, crazy Uncle Bob just showed up with $5 in the super chat. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your contribution to the show. When these things come up, you're like, gosh, I really don't want to have a unexpected landing in the military area, And so, and some of you guys are flying there on a regular basis. Maybe talk about the conversations, and maybe talk about some of your experiences with airspace rules. And what my goal tonight is to not have any sites get shut down, not have any FAR regulations violated to where we show up on the radar. And
I think one of the primary things. So I see this at a lot of places where we'll be standing around on the ground as a group of paramotorists in our favorite local, we fly here all the time spot. And one of the guys in the group will say, "Hey, look at this airplane coming through here," as if to say, this is our turf. And that's really not the way it works. We all share this airspace, and we share it under different rules that need to mesh together and work together. And one of the things in the FAR 103 is that we don't ever have the right of way. But I'm quick to point out to the general aviation guys that they don't have exclusive use of the airspace either. And sometimes they need to be reminded of that. I've kind of softened on that a little bit. I've actually won over a lot of converts in general aviation since I was, last time I was on the show and we talked about LZ or last time I was on a show, it was actually on a competing show that deals more with paramotors. But we talked about LZ preservation at length. And I've won over some converts, particularly amongst my unenlightened general aviation friends, that they can use the approach end of the runway, but that doesn't mean we can never use it because it's there for general aviation. We can use it on the condition that they're not using it, because we're last in line to utilize the airspace. But you brought up a point that I really liked, and I've used that particular website because it's online and you can view the sectional charts online for many, many years. For a brief while, there was a free trial of a web planning tool that was called iFlight Planner. I think it was iflightplanner.com, and it was free for about 6 months, and now you have to pay to use it. But it allowed in registration toggling between IFR charts, Google Maps, Google satellite charts, and the sectional charts. And man, it was really, really good. I used that to heighten my awareness of where I fly in Florida in particular, because that's about the most complex airspace that I typically get to operate a paramotor in. And that was a real good one. And short of that, and me not being one to have too many subscriptions, because I tend to not use them as much as I pay for them.
Yeah.
I never paid for iFlight Planner, but if you're in a real complex area, it might be worth it. What I find now that I do is I fire up another general aviation app, and I'll look it up on my phone and tell you what it's called. It's Flight Plan Go. It's a free app, and I use Flight Plan Go when I'm driving on the ground, and cell phone triangulation will pinpoint where you're at on that map, and you can see into the airspace on your phone from sitting in your car, and you can say, oh, okay, this road, the 405 or whatever you call the highways out there, is if I'm on the east side of this, I'm good in airspace all the way to 12,000 feet. But if I'm on the west side of it, I got to stay below, whatever it is, 5,300 feet, or the ring of that airspace is just the east or west side of a highway or some known landmark that you can get to with your car.
I think that's a great idea. Test it out and play with it, especially just to get used to being mobile.
And if you're using some of these apps like Fly Sky High, it's pretty important that you get into the nuts and bolts of how the app works, and whether or not a lot of times there's in-app purchases that really expand the usable capability of these apps. Basic app is going to get you around. It's going to let you fly from point A to point B. It's going to log your flights, which is pretty important. As your guys with the helicopter may have found, if they may have, I'm a firm believer in record video and record with some sort of data logging device every single flight that you make, because it's not that we want to go out there and push the boundaries so much as it may exonerate you, especially against false claims. But those in-app purchases, man, those are really, really invaluable. And some of them you can set alarms that will tell you, hey, you got airspace coming up within
it's like $10 for Fly Sky, or $20 maybe at the most. Speaking of $20, Crazy Uncle Bob donated $20. He said, "Dag nabbit, someone get Robert a butt fan before I go bankrupt."
There you
go. Thank you, Crazy. Thank you, Crazy Uncle Bob.
Robert, let's talk about something that happened in the course of my career. So, when I first started flying, this is how old I am. Oh my gosh, this hurts. GPS was not for public use.
Wow.
Yeah. So when GPS came about, they started getting a little more creative and defining airspace a lot more tightly, because they had a lot higher expectations of the pilot's ability to stay either in or out of that airspace, because the pilots were starting to acquire GPS systems and GPS navigation capabilities in their airplanes. And one of the common things I heard amongst the controllers of the day was they could tell which airplanes had spent the money to buy the GPSs, because they would ascribe a perfect circle and stay out of their airspace as they rounded the airspace, whereas the other guys were kind of bracketing their heading, or however they were navigating. It wasn't using GPS as a way to do it. So I throw that out there for, we've gotten to the point of really near pinpoint accuracy with the simplicity of a cell phone.
Yeah, it's insane. Absolutely insane. So one of the things that I think is really critical is taking the time. Obviously, we can't cover everything that we want to cover, because I don't want to put people to sleep, but there are tons of resources out there, tons of videos on airspace. There's a few of them that I've watched over the last 4 years that I learned the fundamentals, stuff that you need to know to get by. Why is it important that we get this? if you find yourself in a position where you're violating airspace rules, you have a sheriff come in a helicopter, visit you, make you land, you have to go and talk to the authorities. The authorities put the FAA on the radar. The FAA does an investigation. The investigation leads to some kind of criminal offense. You get in trouble. But more importantly is that you put the freest thing that's left in our quickly dividing country. You get this thing, we're on the radar. And I despise the idea that we would be like Europe with having people look at our motors before we go fly and certifying our wings to protect us from ourselves. I don't want to ever see that kind of stuff happening in our country. We have such a freedom and such a valuable thing. And I really believe it's up to us to keep it. Now, I'm not just talking about site preservation. I'm talking about the sport in general, because the FAA is not going to take the time, and nor are they going to care enough to bless us with some kind of a release. They're just going to blanket ban, and they're going to just shut down what we have is in such an incredible thing. So that's my spiel. Okay, let's talk a little bit about we talked a little bit about the relationship. We have a couple questions in the chat that I'd like to get to. One, it involves some airspace that's here, and I'll open back up the sectional chart. This is from Matthew Pesci. Matthew Pesci is one of the Ugly Raptors, and his question.
You better remember that name. You're now an honorary member.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Matthew Pesci asked this question. He said, Todd, our group approached a local Class D municipal airport and asked permission to fly. Yeah. The airport manager said that the air traffic controllers there said that they were too busy. So let's talk about that a little bit.
It can happen. Okay, so I have heard controllers in the New York metropolitan area tell general aviation airplanes, not airliners, to stay out of the airspace and don't transmit again. I'm too busy. So these guys have a mandate that, their primary goal in these terminal areas is to separate the IFR traffic from other IFR traffic. And one of the things that really helps make their job easier is to simply say there's no traffic that's coming in here under visual flight rules, because we don't have time to get the data we need from them. We don't have time to validate that they have the correct altimeter setting. We're just too busy, so no. So how was I have to ask, was that question approached or fielded by the administrator on a Saturday morning or on a Tuesday morning? Is there an active flight school there? Was the weather good or was the weather bad when you asked the question? Because this is the kind of thing that, you might ask the question on a Saturday morning and get told no, and you come back on a weekday and they're like, sure, we'll work with you. Yeah, we're not too busy today. Yeah. Or, you get the various air traffic controllers with different attitudes and personalities, just like the rest of humanity. And some of them are compliant and will work with you. They'll bend over backwards to help you. And other ones couldn't be bothered. Now they train to a standard, and their standard instruction is to help everybody that asks. But the reality of it is some of these facilities are awfully darn busy. And was this El Cajon?
Would have been in Chula Vista. Technically, I think it's Otay Mesa.
It's brownfield right next to the border of Tijuana. We do have a local pilot that is also an airline pilot, and he flies frequently. I believe he approached somebody there. Maybe he hadn't yet, or whatever. Maybe it was for something else that was close to that. But anyway,
so
he got that response.
A big part of the the communication, and a lot of this dates back to the pre 9/11 era when these facilities were walk-in. Well, they were never really walk-in facilities, but they were certainly walk-up facilities. And a lot of them had a cell phone or a telephone. You pick up the telephone and call the tower cab from the parking lot and say, hey, I'm a pilot. My name's Todd. My pilot certificate number is whatever. Have you got time for a pilot visit in the tower cab today, or in the TRACON, or in the approach facility today? And if they weren't super busy, a lot of times the answer was, yeah, we'll send the guy down. You'll need to sign a form and come on up. And next thing you know, you're standing in the tower and you're looking at, Chicago O'Hare or whatever the airport was. And conversely, we had a system where those air traffic controllers could come sit in our jump seats in the commercial airliners and watch how it unfolded and how we interacted with ATC from their side of the coin. And the point I'm trying to make is, if there's any of that still available locally, your buddy that's the licensed pilot might be able to go down there, get a tower visit, and kind of break the ice, get a little two-way discussion going with what it is you're trying to accomplish. You can always ask the administrator for the tower's direct phone number and call the tower and ask them that question. And if you're not really trying to use the airport property, you're trying to use the airspace, that's a different animal. I find it is a lot easier to use the airspace than it is to use the airport property if a administrator's entrenched and doesn't really want to have to deal with paramotors, unless he specifically briefs the air traffic controllers work in that facility that they need to not cooperate with you. You might be able to get through with a verbal two-way discussion with one of the controllers or several of the controllers. So do we know, was the intent to try to use the airport or just the airspace?
I think they were just trying to fly in the airspace. Is that right, Anthony?
Well, fortunately, the airport doesn't open until 8, and we do our flying at 6:30. But sometimes on the way back out from a cross country.
Okay. Well, let me throw this out there.
But it's
you might be able to check the NOTAMs. A lot of these airports at controlled towered fields that don't open till 8, for instance, when the tower's closed, they revert to class Echo airspace.
Right.
So it's only class Delta when the tower's open. So if you go out there at 6:30 and go flying, you're back on the ground by 7:59 and 59 seconds. You've complied with the FARs.
Right.
So
we would also like to be able to launch from there. And obviously because we do fly an hour and a half, 2 hours before they open, that might have a little bit more leeway and leverage to be able to.
I've got an idea. What we need to do is get some donuts and a ugly Raptors sticker and go over there and just drop it off and just, hey guys, brought you some donuts. Have a nice day. And then maybe in a couple weeks, do it again.
These goodwill gestures work good.
Oh, they do.
Todd from Resurgence had some great points in there in the chat, and we'll go back through the chat and so forth. But
Ripa brought me ice cream tonight.
I get it.
Nice. That was pay his way.
Yep. Ripa brought me ice cream.
Hey, I do want to point out, this is how Yankee sees the sectional charts. And this is most of us.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
I learned it as a student pilot. I learned it getting my ratings to become a commercial pilot. I taught it for a while, and then I actually got to experience it. And anybody that went through, Jeff Goyne is in the same situation. We got a lot of commercial airline pilots that fly paragliders, so it's not unique, and I don't have any special knowledge above any of those other guys. It's just I'm maybe willing to talk about it a little more, have a passion for it. We still we're pretty much golden in class Gulf and class Echo airspace, and for those of us that don't live right underneath the shelf of a major metropolitan area, that's huge areas.
By the way, there is 88 people watching live. Let's spin the wheel.
Yeah.
Spin the
Sean
wheel.
Navsker.
I gotta get a water.
All right, I gotta send out a couple shout outs here first. OrangeProducts.com. I appreciate the coffee mug and all of the sweet like Tootsie Rolls and what are those called? The candy canes.
Yeah.
Candy cane, the peppermints. Ha peppermints. And I'd like to say thank you to Allie, one of the show's friends, right? Allie, I got my Christmas card. Thank you so very much. It was very thoughtful. Lifted up my day, so that was pretty sweet. But you guys have been keeping me busy filling up this wheel. Let me tell you, it has been insane.
Let's spin the well of winning things.
That's right, the well of winning
at
things.
paraglidingtalk.com. Tonight we're going to give away a t-shirt. By the way, this show is brought to you by Nebraska PPG. Josh Bowden, he runs a school in Nebraska. If you're interested in getting some top-notch training, you can sign up with Josh and his team today. There's a link in the description if you want to get a hold of them. Also, this show is brought to you by the Tri-State Skywalkers. Join a flying club. I think it's a great idea. If you're in the Indiana, Kentucky, or Ohio area, you can reach out to Brandon McLeod. Joining the flying club is going to help you to grow in the sport, make you a safer pilot. If you're interested in joining the Tri-State Skywalkers, you can follow the link in the description. Also, go check out germgladiator.com. He runs that website as well for all of your germ killing needs. You can go ahead and spin the wheel.
There we go.
Let it rip.
This is
By the way, the show is also brought to you by iFly Indiana Powered Paragliding. That's who's sponsoring this spin tonight. iFly Indiana Powered Paragliding. If you're interested in flying paramotors, no better place to get the proper training than iFlyIndiana.com. Kevin and his team will get your feet off the ground. That's iFlyIndiana.com.
Ooh, who's it going to be?
I mean, that thing is just moving.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's a little fuzzy, a little blurry.
I'll make it look good.
I got bad internet. I can't even read that.
Here we go. I'll read it to you, Robert.
No, it's clear now. It's clear. Oh, it might be
golly.
Chad. I'm going to say Chad B.
I don't know. Oh, it's pretty close.
Stan. You got robbed, Stan.
Oh,
it might even go to Nick Webster. It's going to be
don't
right on
know.
the line. Right on the line.
Oh.
Chad B. Congratulations, Chad B. You are the winner chicken dinner. What was that, Anthony?
Nothing. I said it was rolling downhill.
Oh, yeah. It was. That thing was greased up nice. Mom says hi in the chat. Hello, my mother. Oh, my gosh. Crazy Uncle Bob. That's why his first name is Crazy. He just donated $10 more to the super chat.
Woo.
That's $35.
Yeah.
Crazy Uncle Bob. Thank you. Merry
Let's
Christmas.
get your butt up in the air, man.
Yeah, it's gonna happen, man. We're getting really close now. We're starting to look at gear. We're starting to look at machines. It's happening. Chad B, by the way, reach out to me through the website paraglidingtalk.com. Contact and fill out the information. I need to know what size shirt you wear so I can send you a paraglidingtalk.com t-shirt. So let's get back to the topic. Yankee has some interesting stories. Before we go to some of those stories, there's a few questions I wanted to get to. This is from the chat. By the way, thank you, Anthony Peregrino, for batting all the questions. This came from Chris Fenmore. He said, question for Yankee. I got a military training route under 250 feet, over 250 knots, right over my house.
Yep.
It's, he said, is the AF supposed to file a NOTAM if they use it?
Nope.
And that AF stands for Air Force.
Air Force. Nope. There's no requirement for them to do that. And now, I guess I would ask, how many times has he woke up by low flying 250 knot airplanes at 200 feet?
Ooh.
Not that often. It just doesn't happen. I mean, these routes, a lot of these routes are on these sectional charts because they've been on there for years. And a lot has changed in the protocol of how the military operates airplanes. And they don't do nearly as much low-level cross-country navigation as they used to because systems have come a lot further. The airplanes are capable of doing some of that on their own. And they demonstrate it offshore and in places where there's just a lot lower footprint because they get complaints about their airplanes too. So I have a neighbor in when I'm in South Carolina, one of my neighbors, he's pretty high ranking at one of the local fields, and I'll protect his innocence. Actually, he was in one of my videos, but all of the guys in his squadron know where he lives.
Oh,
so when they go out and fly, it's like, hey, let's go by the boss's house. And it's an F-16 unit. So my house gets footprinted with F-16 noise on a pretty frequent basis. And what these turkeys will do is they'll come in low and slow, and they'll rotate up and they'll go into a burner climb right over our houses. So it's this confined, high pressure, 400 decibel footprint of noise right down onto.
Do you think you can hear us?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shaking the windows and the.
But then, those guys if they go out there blasting people's windows and zipping along at 250 knots every single day, it's just like living next to a paramotor field. And it isn't long, and people pick up the phone and they start calling their congressman, because the FAA doesn't have the authority over those guys. Which brings up a good point. Robert, let me ask you this. Do you perceive that you'd be in more hot water having a conflict with either military airspace or property, or getting in the way of a commercial airliner on its way into San Diego?
Yeah, it's probably going to be military. I've on a regular basis been flying where I hear the Ospreys, and they send off noise from miles away, and you can feel them. And we had this one flying day where they came right through this valley. I'll actually show the sectional one more time, and they just decided they were going to do something different, and we have them kind of mapped out. We know where they're going to be almost every single time, but this day caught us off guard. If you look at our sectional here, here's Blossom. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here. This is Blossom. We're chilling right here. We were at El Cap, and we were making our way towards the rock pile. So somewhere in between this area here. And sure enough, the Osprey were coming down this line, and they just blew through here, and then they hooked a turn. So
I guess my point is, I know that the personal consequences of getting hit by a 737 versus an Osprey. I honestly think the one that would have the greater consequence for our concern of operating under FAR 103 would be conflict with an airliner with paying passengers on board.
Ooh, yeah.
I think that's the one that would raise the eyebrows of congressional members. I think that's the one that would get the FAA to move off of top dead center on anything with regard to how 103 is revisited and if ever revisited.
Yeah,
because
good point.
Those people have the way the regulators look at it is, we need to protect these people because they're not smart enough to protect themselves, and they're in a situation where they parted with money. They're expecting a service, and we as regulators need to make sure that they're safe from any threats to the greatest extent that we can. So that I throw that out there. So
we have another question. This is from Jay. He said, JB, he said, have a question on how to call and ask permission to fly in certain airspaces. So
I think I know what he's getting at there. And the problem is always finding the correct frequency. So, usually from our perspective, it's not typically going to be calling an airborne air traffic control center and working with them, because they have no way to validate our position, and they really can't do anything to help us. So what we're typically talking about here is, you want to launch from within the Class D airspace at your farm and fly out to your buddy's house, and you just need permission. And the publication used to be called the Airport Facilities Directory, and they recently changed it. I mean, within the last 4 or 5 years. So let's see what the new name of that is. And what you need to do is pull up the airport specific information for the facility that you're talking about, and the phone numbers are in there. And if the phone numbers aren't in there, at least a contact person is in there as an administrator for that airport. And by doing that, you can call him and say, hey, I would like to get the phone number because I need to talk to the tower from time to time. And if he chooses to give it to you, that would be a good indication that you got at least 1 foot in the door. So if you know, if he had a specific instance, I could maybe try to help him specifically, but you know, a lot of this is going to have to be ferreted out on a local basis. And it might take a drive over to the airport, knocking on a few doors and saying, where's the admin building? Who's in charge? How do I get this information? It might take some persistence. So it's not like there's a end all, you know, the charts are full of frequencies. You can even your sectional chart, you go back to your sectional chart there for a second, Robert, you can see the frequencies on there. In fact, we'll pull a few off of there, but the frequency might not be the best way to initially initiate this discussion unless you're in the air and you're, you know, trying to get. So if you look up at Ramona, it says right there, control tower 119.875. Well, that's the frequency that you would initiate contact with the control tower on.
Okay, so now keep in mind, this is not your standard ham radio. You need an airband radio to get on these frequencies.
That's
and
correct.
There's some regulations involved in
That's
that
correct.
as well. So in order to, there are some free flight guys that do use the airband radios. And I think it's a good idea to at least explore the idea if you're going to do big cross country stuff, or if you're going to be flying where you know you're going to be in airspace, or at least somebody in the group has some contact with airspace. I'll tell you an example of something that happened. We were at the SIV clinic. This was up in what was that lake? Lake Berryessa. And Lake Berryessa has these experimental aircraft that will come and fly across the edge of the lake. And so we're doing an SIV. We're doing tow operations. We're pulling up to 5,000 feet, and these airplanes are flying underneath us. And so every once in a while, somebody would have to run and go grab the airband radio and say, attention aircraft, blah, blah, blah. Tow operations in the area up to 5,000 feet. Repeat paragliding tow operations by boat over the Lake Berryessa between 300 and 3,000 feet, or whatever it was that they were saying. And it was giving a heads up. As soon as he got on the radio and said that, I watched the plane 2 different times just bank hard and go the other way.
And this is a real good lead into some of those other topics that I sent you. So what happened there is this guy's flying around, and the term that used to be common and popular was fat, dumb, and happy. And you guys, or whoever was on the radio, shook him very gently out of that comfort zone and woke him up and said, hey, this might be an issue in the area that you're operating in. We see you. And he doesn't necessarily owe anybody the right or the courtesy of moving out of the airspace, but at the very least, it might heighten his awareness. And you know, one of the topics that I sent you was the discussion about situational awareness and how it works and how it applies to us is how it can break down. And so we see these airliners and we think, well, those guys either see me or those guys have a plan for avoiding me. And it doesn't always go perfectly smoothly in those cockpits. Guys can get mired in a checklist or spill coffee on themselves. And then the other guy's laughing. And if it can happen, I've seen it happen. And it isn't long or worse than that, or a totally different situation than that, is that air traffic controllers can change what they thought they were going to do. Well, now all of a sudden it's a mad scramble to get the flight data computers programmed to get the airplane to do what they were supposed to be doing. So the terminal area, when we talk about airplane arrivals, and that's pretty much the guys you're going to try to avoid if you're going to fly in one of these tight areas where there's lots of airspace concerns. They're coming into the terminal area or they're leaving it. So they're accelerating their transition into climb to get out, to get en route. The en route portion's boring. Or they're coming in, they're setting up, they're determining when and where they're going to configure their airplane for slowing it down and all of these other things that have to happen to safely get on the ground, and how they're going to align with the runways and such. And those two areas used to be really, really crowded, and they invented these fantastic computers that allowed those crews to de-peak the arrival phase. So, you know, people, I always hear this, well, isn't it boring sitting up there? Well, no, it's not, because from about the time you cross over Denver till you get to San Diego, you're starting to get into that mode of what we need to do to affect a safe arrival in San Diego. And you start planning about, well, we'll start our descent at 230 miles from the airport. We'll plan a slowdown at 10,000 feet. We'll plan a secondary slowdown. We'll plan flap extension, blah, blah, blah. And all of this is briefed. And if it all goes off without a hitch, it goes perfectly smoothly. Where things get crazy and those crew members can lose situational awareness is when they thought that we were going to land on runway 27, and runway 27 is closed because an airplane had a flat tire on it. And now we got to land on runway 13, and we're right at the legal landing minimum. Now, both pilots are heads down, typing in the computer. They're trying to figure out navigation. They're trying to figure out systems. They're trying to figure out limitations. They're running checklists they may not have been planning on running at different stages of the arrival that they'd already briefed it once. And the guys that are good at it can make that switch really quick. But new crews, guys that are new on the airplane, or some of the slower guys amongst us, they can get all balled up in that. Both guys are heads down. They're not looking out the window. How much time do you think they're looking out for paragliders?
Right. Yeah, especially if both of them are playing on their iPad. By the way, Matt Cowan donated $10 to the super chat. Thank you, Matt Cowan. Situational awareness.
And I mean, we need that too, but that the point of illustrating that is that we expect more SA, more situational awareness from the professionals, the guys that are out there flying a lot, and they have issues too. And those issues can cause us problems because, you might be right on the edge of the airspace and they're supposed to be inside the airspace and they're not. So, the maneuverability of a paramotor to get out of the way of a 250 knot airplane, I don't know.
A lot of this stuff will you can learn a lot of this stuff in training. I encourage you to ask your instructors. Maybe you don't have a good understanding of airspace. Reach out to your instructor, especially if you got paid instruction. One place you can go, Lone Star Paramotor. If you're in Texas, Lone Star Paramotor is run by Ron Turan. The website is lonestarparamotor.com. That's lonestarparamotor.com. They are a sponsor of the show. Also, the show is brought to you by Torrey Pines Glider Port. If you want to learn how to free flight in the most beautiful place in the country, in my opinion, you can fly the coast in La Jolla, beautiful, sunny Southern California. The website is flytorrey.com. That's FLYTORREY.com. And also, this show is brought to you by Resurgence PPG. Craig Taylor, take it away.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah, I know. I purposely just
because I listened to us with the Zoom, but I listened to the show on another computer next to me, so that when you
Oh, you muted yourself. There you go.
Anyway, my secrets on that. But Resurgence PPG is a fantastic 501c3 nonprofit for veterans by veterans. They fall very dear to my heart and many others. If you can do anything to help those guys, please do so. ResurgencePPG.com. Use smile.amazon.com if you cannot donate directly. They have just put out the latest quarterly. I think it was about $388.72.
Yeah, I saw that.
Give backs from smile.amazon.com. So it's hovering right around that mark every quarter, and that's fantastic. I thank you. I'm sure Todd and all of those veteran nominees that go through the program do as well. So keep up. Thanks very much.
All right. Check your NOTAMs.
Check your NOTAMs.
Yeah. Public service announcement. Yeah. We have to do another show on this, and we'll dig a little deeper. Yank, what do you think about maybe in, say, early February? Come back and do it again?
Well, I hope to be on the road.
Oh,
so
I wouldn't want to step on any of your flying adventures.
You wouldn't mind me doing
your
it
people
from,
to talk to his people.
Yeah, and we could maybe. I don't know how far west I'll make it by then, but my plan is to be headed west.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people make it almost all the way here. And then for some reason, they're like, I got distracted and I ended up in Texas. It's
no, I know I want to make it at least as far as Glamis.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's striking distance. That's
if
Josh.
You make it to Glamis, you gotta make it to the coast. Come on.
I know.
You got to come fly Blossom, especially with your free flight. And I know Ripman just got his P3 or is really close to getting his P3, so he can fly Tori.
No, well, he's not coming with me. He brought me ice cream, but he doesn't. That didn't earn him a ride with me.
He's got to pay a lot more than that.
He's sitting in my living room. You want to see him?
I know. I invited him because I wanted to harass him the whole show, but.
Well, we were having internet. So what was happening in the pre-show there, I was picking up his output and his input from Mike.
Plus, messed with the bandwidth and he sucked up all the gigabytes.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So I'm reading a couple of questions in the chat here, and there's a couple of guys that are, what's the word, pimping me.
Nice.
Yeah, we're not gonna go into one of them especially.
Yeah, I know I've saved you from some.
Right.
Some of these questions are great.
Although I wonder. Go ahead. I'll let you go.
I was going to say there is one other statement that was made, and this was by. This is by Crazy Uncle Bob. He made a statement I thought was important to note. He said, "Here's the rundown on the airband radios. Anyone can listen. Any pilot can talk. Anyone in an actual emergency can talk to summons help or facilitate help. No FCC license required." So that is true.
This is true.
But I just wanted to make that note. And by the way, I want to say thank you guys, all the moderators, all the guys that are part of the show and what you guys do. Everybody that's in the chat, lots of people here tonight. Really glad that you guys came and watched the show. Maybe you missed a show, or maybe you want to go and check out some of the shows, but you don't have time to watch them. We are now streaming on all platforms, including Apple, Stitcher, the other, what is the other, Spotify. We're on there. We're on a bunch of them. So there's a bunch of really cool places where you can watch the show. If you want to support the show further, you can go to Patreon or PayPal. And I just want to say I really appreciate everybody who's been giving to the Paramotor Fund and advancing my desperate attempt at getting a paramotor. I didn't really think it was ever going to come to pass, and we are really close. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your investment in the show. We're going to go to the after show. If you are a supporter, you can put your email in the chat and we will send you an invite and you can come. Yankee's going to hang out for just a little while long. Now, keep in mind, it's getting late over there, so he's going to have to go to bed soon. So we're going to go to the after show. Thank you guys so much. Yankee, thank you for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for giving him ice cream. Moderators, Anthony Peregringo, Craig Taylor, Sean Nafsker, Nick, thank you guys. Really appreciate you. And we will catch you on the next one. So if I don't see you in the air